أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I greet you with the universal greeting of peace, and today we are absolutely privileged to be able to talk about one of the 5 pillars of Islam, and that is the Hajj, and how it fits in as far as other mass gatherings are concerned, and what we as medical personnel can advise future Hajj pilgrims and current ones about how to optimally prepare themselves for this once-in-a-lifetime journey. I am Salim Parker. I'm a general practitioner in Cape Town. I also deal quite a lot with mass gatherings. I've written the chapter for the CDC Yellow Book on Travelers' Health on Hajj. I've also been collaborating with the Global Center of Mass Gathering Medicine in Saudi Arabia about the health of pilgrims, and I'm absolutely honored to be able to be part of this journey as far as the Hujjaj are concerned. I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Nasir Jaffer, and we go a long way back. Dr. Nasir is a sports physician. He's also very, very involved in uplifting the health of the communities. Specifically when it comes to Hajj, I developed this idea of assisting the Hujjaj physically in order for them to be able to undergo the spiritual journey in the optimal way. Dr. Nasir, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here as well and to share my ideas and thoughts with everybody.
Inshallah. So we've divided this program into 2 segments. I will be speaking about mass gatherings in general, not specifically about the Hajj initially, but then I will concentrate on the Hajj after about halfway through my presentation. And then Dr. Nasir will take over as far as the idea of being fit for Hajj and how the physical part can actually impact on the mental as well as the spiritual appreciation of the Hajj as far as we know. So let's talk about mass gatherings, and I want to emphasize here, Hajj is different. Now the definition of a mass gathering is the gathering of people to the extent, and it doesn't have to be large numbers, it can be any number, but to the extent where it actually strains the capacity of the host city, nation, or the country. And it can, when we compare this to a super spreading event, a super spreading event is where an infectious agent such as COVID, we all know about that, spreads much more than was anticipated. So when it comes to mass gatherings, you get 2 types. You get the organized ones, such as the Hajj, which we know is specific to time, specific to place, and specific in the rituals and the sequence of the rituals as far as the order of them is concerned. Then you get the spontaneous ones, and South Africa obviously hosted the 2010 World Cup. This was won by Spain. We all know that. The Spanish weren't all here to celebrate, so when they won the cup in 2010, the masses in Madrid, for example, spontaneously took to the streets. There were about 2 million people in the streets of Madrid in 2010 celebrating. This was unplanned. The ambulance services and the police services couldn't cope with what was happening. So over 100 people were injured, and about 2 people were killed during this spontaneous outbreak of joy and celebration. But there are obviously health risks as far as any mass gathering is concerned. We know, for example, stampedes, and I'll talk about that a bit later. We know that accidents can happen. There are infectious diseases and infection-preventable diseases that can take place. And then there's obviously heat-related issues when it comes to the Hajj itself, and I will talk about that a bit later as well. We also have to take into account that there are benefits. We know that there are psychological benefits, there are spiritual benefits. There's the concept of the social benefits of people bonding together and meeting with each other. So those are the concepts when we talk about mass gatherings. Now I want to talk now first about the largest mass gathering ever. The Hindu mass gathering called the Kumbh Mela doesn't take place every year. It takes place every 3 years. And what happens there is that people gather from all over India, and every 3 years it rotates through different places. But the largest one of them takes place every 12 years and only at a place called Allahabad. This is where the two rivers, the Ganges and the Yamuna rivers, join. There's a confluence of these two rivers. So every 12 years, the mass gathering takes place there. The last one was in 2013, and the next one will be in 2025, which is in 2 years' time. So the Kumbh Mela of 2013 was considered to be the largest gathering of human beings ever at any one time. There was 100 million people attending the bathing in the river in 2013, but this is spread over a period of 55 days. Everyone doesn't go there all together. There's obviously crowd issues. There's obviously the fact that respiratory and gastrointestinal germs can spread because everyone is going into the river. There's crowding. They're coughing and breathing over each other, so germs can spread along in that particular way. So when it comes to a yearly, in other words, an annual mass gathering, the ARBAEEN is the largest of them all. And this takes place in Iraq on an annual basis. In 2017, there was over 20 million people who attended it. I'm every time going to compare Hajj with these large mass gatherings. When it comes to the ARBAEEN, even though there were 20 million people there, 17 to 18 million of them were local Iraqi pilgrims. About 2 million came from Iran, and some of them walked up to 400 miles. Again, when it comes to comparing it to the Hajj, we're looking at a time period that's really of a much shorter duration. The peak of the ARBAEEN is basically the travel to Najaf, and this is and this takes place over a period of 2 days. And the scale of this is massive. I mean, we know that 50 million free meals are given during those few days. So largest annual mass gathering, but it's over a shorter period compared to the Hajj. And there's no particular set of rituals except for those 2 days when people walk the 75 kilometers. One of the other large mass gatherings, much bigger as far as numbers are concerned, that takes place every year, takes place over the Easter weekend in South Africa, right in our country, in a place called Moira. And this is the Easter congregation of the Zion Christian Church. Again, when you compare it to the Hajj, we're looking at it as an event that takes place over 2 days, over the Easter weekend. It's younger people who go there. It is people who've been there before. Most of them, 98% of them, tend to be quite young and repeat visitors. Also, what happens there is that the young people only congregate for a short period. Another large gathering, which attracts about 2 to 4 million people on an annual basis, takes place in Bangladesh, and this is the Bijwa Istima. Again, if you compare it to Hajj, and this is the type of crowds that we see that come there, 2 to 4 million people, but again, it's over a weekend, and lately they've spread it over 2 consecutive weekends to accommodate the big crowds. So what we see there is that people come for the weekend. There's obviously lots of activities such as talks, such as lectures, and there's prayer sessions and so forth. Again, most of those who attend are locals. Most of them who attend come for a short period, and there's only about 50,000 foreigners who actually come and attend this compared to the Hajj. In Senegal, we have the Grand Magal also. It's a Muslim event, takes place in a place called Touba every year. Also takes place over a short period. It's again between 3 to 5 million people attend it. But to use the 2020 event as an example, it was mostly locals who came. They come for a short period, and this is in contrast to what happens during the Hajj. Now, when we talk of what can possibly happen at an event such as a mass gathering. And here I'm going to divert to football events because we've got good evidence and documentation of that. So what happens is that we look not only at a virus, because a virus will firstly have its own unique characteristics, and here I'm talking specifically about COVID. We're looking at how easily it can spread, how contagious it is, but we also look at the population that it might infect. And we know, for example, that the human population was very vulnerable to being infected with COVID. We know that we weren't exposed to it previously, and therefore it was easy for the human and mankind to be infected by it. But there's also other factors. We look at the behavior of humans and how they give the virus the advantage and the potential to spread. So I want to go to Milan in this state. Took place on the 19th of February of 2020, a couple of years ago. And it's often called Game Zero. The Italian club called Atalanta was hosting a Spanish club. 44,000 locals attended, and about 2,000 to 3,000 Spanish came to watch this match. Now, everyone was crowded in the stadium, but because it was such a significant match for the locals, they accumulated and they went to bars, they went in the streets, they had household parties, for example, to watch this match. Atalanta won the match, and we know how passionate Italians are about soccer. So every time a goal was scored, people cheered, they shouted, spreading the virus. They hugged each other, spreading the virus again. And this is often called Game Zero and has often been termed a time bomb as far as COVID-19 is concerned, because it was found that a couple of days later and in the weeks that followed, there was a 500% increase in the incidence of COVID-19 in that area, directly linked to the behavior and the exposure that people had at soccer matches. So when we talk of religious tourism, and here I want to now start focusing on Hajj itself, we can see that there's a number of other religious mass gatherings. But when compared to Hajj, they are all shorter in duration. They are mostly attended by local people, even though there are foreigners attending it as well. And it tends to be the younger people who tend to go to it. Not always, but in the vast majority of cases, this is actually true compared to Hajj itself. So when we talk about Hajj, we know that it is the fifth pillar of Islam, and it is stated very, very eloquently in the Quran that proclaim to man the Hajj. And this was ordained unto Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, and we know that the Quran states that people will come from far away on lean camels by using every modality that's possible. So and just to put it in context, because it is such a rare event in the life of a Muslim, they're only going to go once in their lifetime. If we look at the number of Muslims who are living at this moment, we're looking at about 1.6 billion Muslims. We know that currently about 4 million people only can perform Hajj. So if those 1.6 billion people live for a long period, and no one else gets born, and no one else dies, and of course that's an impossible situation, but we're looking at a theoretical example. It will take 375 years for each and every Muslim that's living today to perform Hajj just once in their lifetime. So clearly we know this is not going to happen, and only about a quarter of Muslims will actually have the honor of performing Hajj during their life. So those who can go must know that it is an absolute privilege, and it's going to be a once in a lifetime honor that they will be undertaking. So this is why it is so important to be optimally prepared when people undertake this journey. And when it comes to Islam, why is it so important? We know the 5 tenets of Islam. It is believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his final messenger. We know that we have to make salah 5 times a year. In Ramadan, we have to fast between sunrise and sunset for a month. we have to pay zakah once a year, and of course we have to perform Hajj once in our lifetime. And what is required for our Hujjaj? If firstly they have the financial means, if the way is safe, and if they are of the physical and the health means to go, this obligation becomes compulsory. Now the conditions for Hajj that I've just mentioned now is often put into context of health, and people are exempted if they suffer from poor health, but they are not excluded from performing it. And that's why it is important to realize that when it comes to Hajj itself, we know that a big number of our Hujjaj, in fact over 50% of the Hujjaj are over the age of 50. Over a third of them have comorbid medical conditions, which are such as diabetes, such as hypertension, which under normal circumstances would have excluded them, or not excluded them, would have exempted them from performing Hajj. But people want to perform Hajj. It is often the one thing that they've saved for all their lives. So even if they're in poor physical health, they often want to, as a last object in life, to perform Hajj. And for example, I had a patient in 2019 who had multiple medical problems. She had diabetes, she had severe rheumatoid arthritis, she was on immunosuppressants, she had quite a few other mobility issues. And in the same group that I was with that particular year, we had 2 patients with breast cancer, we had 2 patients who were on, or 2 travelers who were on dialysis, for example, but they all could perform the Hajj in a relative comfort because they were relatively well prepared for the journey, physically, mentally, and medically. So Hajj, as you can see, is an accumulation of a number of people. I mean, this is the crowds that we see there on an annual basis. We have to bear in mind that people come from 184 different countries, all converging into Saudi Arabia, possibly spreading germs there. But we must also take into account that they are going back to those 184 countries, again raising the possibility of taking germs that they acquired in Saudi Arabia back to the country of origin. So if we look at the crowds in Saudi Arabia during the Hajj time, we know that the density can be 9 people per square meters, and that close intensity with people breathing close to each other can lead to the spread of infectious diseases. So when we talk of travel medicine, we talk of how easily things can be prevented, for example, through vaccines. And one of the commonest things that we can prevent is influenza. And if we look at the figures about how often we can prevent and how often certain diseases occur, we'll see something like meningitis occurs 1 in every 10 million travelers, but more frequently amongst Hujjaj, but still very, very unlikely for it to be occurring amongst the normal Hujjaj. But we shouldn't only look at how frequently it occurs, we should look at the impact of it. Now, if you look again at meningitis, and we know that people going for Hajj must take a meningitis vaccine, if you look at the impact of it, more than 10% of people who get meningitis are going to die. 20% of them will be permanently disabled through one form or the other. So that's why the Saudi government is adamant that all Hujjaj should be taking the meningitis vaccine, and they won't actually issue a visa for you to perform Hajj unless you have the vaccine. And the reason for that is, historically speaking, in 1983, there was a type of meningitis that started off as an outbreak in Nepal in 1983-84. Pilgrims traveling overland from Nepal spread it over to Pakistan by 1984. By 1987, pilgrims from Pakistan attending the Hajj caused an outbreak amongst the Hujjaj performing the Hajj itself. And the following year, we had people returning to sub-Saharan Africa, causing outbreaks after they actually acquired the germ during the Hajj in Saudi Arabia. They took it to sub-Saharan Africa, and by 1989 it has spread to Ethiopia as well as to Kenya. And since then, the Saudi Arabian government made it compulsory for people to have the vaccine. 2000, we had a different outbreak. Remember, the one of 1987 was what we call meningitis A. In 2000, there was an outbreak of one called meningitis W. And what happened there was that Hujjaj, who took it, who acquired it in Saudi Arabia, took it home to different countries, causing outbreaks in countries such as the United States in the west to Indonesia in the east. This is the importance of actually getting vaccinated against certain diseases, because we can prevent the disease in that way. So let's go back to Hajj now. We'll see that when we do surveys amongst Hujjaj, up to 90% of them will report that they had some form of disease, mostly respiratory infections such as influenza, such as pneumonia, and such as bronchitis. And we did a study in 2017 which showed that up to 67% of our Hujjaj reported some infection, and most of them reported respiratory infections. This was during Hajj. When they returned from Hajj, about 40% of them reported some illness, and 60% of this was due to respiratory infections. So that is why we as doctors firstly advise people to be vaccinated. This is one arm of the preparation of making sure that you do not get sick during the Hajj period. But there are other issues we have to also consider. The one is, for example, heat injuries. Currently the temperature during Hajj is between 40 and 50 degrees, and we know that people try not to drink too much when they go on Hajj. We know that a significant percentage of the Hujjaj, like I've already mentioned, are older people who don't adapt easily when against heat-related illnesses. And so it's important for them to be physically prepared for this type of challenge that they will be facing. And again, the other aspect that we often see in Saudi Arabia are stampedes. What is shown on the screen at the moment is in 2006, and that refrigerated truck was picking up the bodies of the martyrs who were killed and trampled to death. 364 of them were trampled to death over a period of 2 hours. We as the South African medical team were asked to go and assist there as well. This happened just after 2 o'clock, and by 6 o'clock, 4 hours later, you can see at the bottom photo, my son on my shoulder, standing right next to the Jamarat, pelting at ease, because the authorities by that time put some order into there. We had another issue in 2015 when there wasn't strict adherence to the instructions that was given to the Hujjaj, and we had over 1,000 of the Hujjaj trampled to death, and these are some of the bodies that we can see that the authorities had to pick up along the way. So we can see that Hajj is a physical journey which involves taking the optimal medical conditions into account. It's a physical exposure to heat, and therefore you need some level of fitness for that to counter the effects of the heat. And it's also other issues that have to be considered, such as crowd control and how we should actually be able to counter these type of and work to not only counter it, but to also to work along with it so that as little of us are affected by it. So that is the end part of my talk. And what we've realized was that, and Dr. Nasir has been the champion of this, is that fitness is really a very, very major component of actually getting ready for Hajj. And he will talk us through how the Fit for Hajj idea was developed and what the results were, because we actually did a scientific study on it. So while Dr. Nasir is going to give us a short introduction, I'll get the slideshow ready.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are now talking about a topic which is very passionate to me. being in the medical field, but specifically in sports medicine, I've realized that, you know, physical activity has a huge role to play in our lives. First of all, we know that a lot of people who are physically ill can alleviate a lot of the problems by becoming physically active. Secondly, we are also prescribing physical exercise as a tool of, you know, countering medical illnesses in people's lives. We know that people who are unfit, you know, who are not very physically active, are more prone to developing diseases as well. And finally, we are using, we're also finding that, you know, there are major psychological benefits physically, medically, and emotionally when one indulges in a physical activity program. So why do we need a physical fitness program? Okay, so we know that Hajj is, we've just been told, it's a unique occasion where people are gathered in mass in a very localized area, and there's many factors to contend with. Okay, so the first one is that, you know, it's foreign terrain you're going to, it's foreign climate, you're not used to those temperatures. The body has to adapt very quickly in a very short space of time. Secondly, most people who are going are the elderly, so they go with a lot of illnesses, like, for example, high blood pressure, sugar diabetes, and also other conditions, heart ailments, and so on and so forth. And also, mostly the elderly were going, so they are physically weak, so they're not very strong, and they are not able to cope very well with the physical demands that are placed on their bodies when they reach the other side. And then also, don't forget, a lot of our community, especially on this side of the world, which is in, let's say, the West, are overweight as well. So that also compounds their efforts in trying to contend with the demands of Hajj. So just coming back to the. Okay. Sorry, can I just?
You're just going to swap seats.
Sorry. So if we look at the, so just a couple of statistics that we want to talk about. Okay, so as we said, over 45% of programs that are actually going to be going there are going to be doing a walking Hajj, or they're going to be participating for a lot of the activities on their feet, and they're going to be walking quite a lot of distances. Nearly half of the programs we know they walk on average about 5 kilometers a day during the days of Hajj. The 47% of programs drink less than about 2 liters a day, which we've been told also that because of the high temperatures, we need to make sure that, you know, you don't become dehydrated, and then that will compound your state of health. And then we really said that, you know, most of them are elderly. About 2/3 of people who go over are elderly pilgrims. So with that comes obviously the fact that they've got a lot of illnesses with them and physically unfit. Okay, so just how much walking gets done during the days of Hajj. So there have been estimates done, and you can see that from the slide that there's quite a bit of walking to be done. So, so let's just take the days of Hajj, for example. Just about everybody is going to be walking from Muzdalifah to Mina, from Makkah to Arafah. Probably you'll have public transport. But the one thing that you're not going to be able to get away from is from Muzdalifah to Mina. You're going to have to walk that, because by and large, the distance is fairly short, and public transport is not easily available. So that's about 5 kilometers. So that is the minimum that you're going to be walking on the day of the day of Wukuf, and shortly thereafter. So for us, what we decided was, if there is something that we need to do, is to get people to do at least a 5-kilometer walk comfortably before people are leaving for Hajj, so that when they are on the other side, when they are faced with this massive amounts of walking, they can actually do that comfortably. by and large, as I said, most of our pilgrims, they don't do a walking Hajj, which is well in excess of 20 kilometers. They're going to be doing at least part of that, minimum 5 kilometers when they're going to be forced to be walking. Okay, so what are the benefits of physical activity? So they are numerous, but we just want to highlight something. Okay, so the first is that we know that exercise contributes significantly to overall health, okay? And that has been proven over the period of many, many years. So there's no doubt about it that if you're more physically active, the chances of you developing an illness are far less. But we also know the other thing, and that is that inactivity is directly linked to the negative consequences and negative health outcomes. So people who are not physically active are going to be more likely to be developing ailments like high blood pressure, for example, sugar diabetes, and all the other ailments that come as one ages. So physical activity is directly protective, against either the development and the prevention of these illnesses, or it can delay and the intensity of these illnesses. So direct correlation, so there's no argument about the value of physical activity. So let's just talk about walking, right? Because a lot of people have this idea that, if one walks, then that is just a minor form of exercise. There's not really much benefit there. But we know for a fact that even people who walk a little bit every week, they are going to get major benefits from that little bit of activity. So we found that it's not just a recreation, it's actually huge benefits there. Then secondly, also when we compare it to running, there's also comparable benefits there. Then every little bit counts. So even if you do a little bit of walking every single day or during the week, you are going to score in a major way. So just a couple of examples here. When you're going to a mall, for example, why must you park as close as possible to the entrance? Just park a little bit further away and walk towards the entrance. When you're inside, why do you have to take the escalator when there are steps as well, stairs going up or down? And why do you have to take the lift, for example? So things like that, actually, those little things also contribute to assisting you developing a level of fitness. And then even a weekend session of a bit of physical activity has shown major benefits overall. So people who have this idea that, I don't have time, I'm too busy, I'm working, and I can't get to the gym. Remember, even if you do a one session on a Sunday morning, for example, it also helps. Okay, so having all that information in mind, we decided in the year of 2018-2019 to start a walking program for people who were interested in improving their physical level, their physical fitness levels before leaving for Hajj. And we enrolled about 100 people, and we wanted to know what were the effects of an exercise program on these people when they were on Hajj, and what kind of experience did they have when they came back. So that was the basic idea of developing a program for these people. So what we wanted to do was to improve the conditioning of the participants before leaving, and then to attempt to get most of them to comfortably walk a 10-kilometer distance. And that is, as we showed on the previous slide, what we were aiming for was to at least get to do a 5, but to do a 10 kilometer would have been better. And this intervention we wanted to prove was going to improve physical and mental well-being, while also reducing the chances of illnesses and injuries. So what we did was we conducted the program, and then we gave the Hujjaj a questionnaire when they came back from the Hajj. And what we found was the walking program directly improved the levels of fitness. It also improved the mental state, where they became happier, they became more contented, and they were just uplifted prior to them leaving. And then obviously we also found that there were major health benefits when they returned, in that a large number of them didn't become ill, and also a lot of them didn't become injured when they were on Hajj. So this is a graph of the statistics of a study that was done by Brother Salim a little bit earlier. He did allude to it, and what we found that in their study they interviewed almost 1,000 people, and about 65% of those people when they were on Hajj either an illness or an injury that they picked up while they were over there. So, I mean, that is a huge number of people that became ill or injured while they were on Hajj. So we wanted to know what happened to people in our studies. So we took also a group of people who weren't on the program, and we sent a questionnaire to them just to ask them, listen, how many of these people, while they were on Hajj, became ill and had injuries? And you can see that ours came back 62%, so which is very close to the previous years, which was 65%. So more or less we could see that the statistics repeated themselves in 2 years in succession. So the first year it was 65, the second sample that we did was 62%. So then we wanted to know what happened to the people who are on our walking program. Did they have similar numbers? How many of them became ill? How many of them became injured? And not unsurprisingly, we found that only 15% of our people who are on the walking program became ill or had injuries. So that's a staggering number, a staggering decline, you know, of numbers that of people who were injured or developed illnesses. So this told us then that we are probably doing something right, okay? And just to put all three graphs in perspective, and you can see from here, if we look at our number on the far left, that is the 15% that we're talking about. The other two were 62% and 65%. So if you look at it visually, there's a dramatic drop in the level of injuries and illnesses that were picked up in the group that we trained before we sent them, before they went over Hajj. Okay, so these results were so dramatic that we thought we had to put it together in a journal article, and this journal article was published a year ago, and it appeared in this journal over here. So now it's also scientifically validated that although we had a suspicion that, you know, we were doing the right thing, we were on the right track, that fitness would benefit the Hujjaj before, increased levels of fitness would benefit the Hujjaj before they left for Hajj. Now we have statistics to prove it. Okay, so the conclusion for me is that, remember, there's also a hadith that says that the person who's obviously, the Messenger of Allah said that the stronger believer is the better and more beloved to Almighty Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and than the weak believer, although there is goodness in both of them. And we have now proved that, you know, with this template that we've got, that we've designed for Hajj, that, you know, it can be utilized anywhere else, you know, not just in Cape Town. And it works, and then it will obviously give a better preparation for the Hujjaj before they leave, and preparing for them for the mental and physical challenges that lie on the other side. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Shukran for that. But you know, we talked of the decrease in the number of infections and injuries, but there was also some other factors that came through, and one of them was the benefit in the psychological well-being. Do you want to expand on that one?
Yeah. So this was actually quite surprising as well. When we started out with the study, a lot of people were feeling down, depressed, they were a bit worried, you know, anxious, and so on and so forth. But as time progressed, you know, we found that the mental status just suddenly was boosted. You know, it became more positive, more energetic. You know, and one of the things that was also happening there, which we didn't account for, was the social interaction of people on the groups. I mean, when we took them for the walks, we found that, you know, the bonding, just the interaction. It was so evident that people were enjoying themselves that a lot of people felt left out if they didn't pitch up for our training sessions. By the way, I didn't now go into the details of the training section. We took people on a program for about 12 weeks, which was 3 months, and you know, we did it starting in I think it was in December, but the whole idea was to finish it off just prior to Ramadan. And in Ramadan, we had some maintenance sessions that we ran. And after Ramadan, the Hujjaj were left to do their own thing. And alhamdulillah, most of them retained quite a bit of their fitness before they left. So just the camaraderie that was formed, it just boosted the level of the mental state of the people. And we actually had the tool that we measured that as well. And it was quite profound that, you know, people obviously benefited hugely psychologically as well.
All right. As far as for Hajj is concerned, we needed the buy-in and from the Hujjaj, and alhamdulillah they came en masse. But an important and vital component, again, was not the doctors, because we could just come up with a template. I think we have to pay tribute to the coaches of the Teko Club who were absolutely vital, but not only show their commitment to it, but they also put in all the efforts to it. Remember one day there was one of the tunnels that they were going to walk through was flooded. They immediately were able to work out an alternate pathway, and used to be able to quantify the load for the Hujjaj in the groups. And I think we have to commend them for what they were able to do.
Yeah, so just a bit of background. So what we did was we ran this program from the Iteko Clubhouse, which is in Rondebosch in Cape Town, and we utilized volunteers from the club itself, and these people were absolutely amazing. We had groups, about 3 or 4 groups that we had, and they were the main coaches, and then there were also assistant coaches who assisted us. And we found that, that because of the interaction with the people, it was just absolutely amazing what they did. People were so keen on coming every week that when they weren't there, they felt that they'd been left out. So alhamdulillah, we had a team of very dedicated and committed volunteers that assisted us. And alhamdulillah, because of them and the interaction with the people, and also the efforts, we obviously had some spectacular results at the end of it all. We also want to say that although the study was done in 2018, 2019, we repeated it again in 2019, 2020, but then COVID came along, and then in the middle of our program, we had to abandon the program. But even there, we had a phenomenal turnout of people who were interested in improving their physical fitness.
And when just to conclude, we want to make, especially in Cape Town, part of the culture is to go, for example, to visit the Karamats. I think the long-term vision that Dr. Nasir has is for Cape Townians especially to be part of the Fit for Hajj, as part of the Hajj preparations. But we've managed, and you especially were quite involved in driving that, to extend it to different centers as well.
Yeah, so alhamdulillah, what we had was after our initial project, which was in 2019, and subsequently also people got wind of the fact of what we were doing, and there were inquiries from elsewhere in the country. And this year we, for example, launched another branch up in just another facility up in Johannesburg, and they also had a program this year, and similarly in Durban as well. Port Elizabeth also had inquiries, and they were interested in running it from there. But we also had somebody from overseas who was interested, alhamdulillah. And Brother Salim will quickly just talk about the overseas one.
Yes, it was a physiotherapist who was very keen about starting it there. In fact, he did start it. We haven't been communicating a lot with him currently, but hopefully the concept, it doesn't have to be our Fit for Hajj one, but just getting Hujjaj fit will spread worldwide. So it'll be part of the preparation for Hajj, where people can be physically at the prime when they undertake this once-in-a-lifetime journey.
Yeah, the whole intention is to get the attention of the Saudi Ministry for Hajj as well. Because there's obviously major benefits for them. If they can maybe find out if, virtually every country could have some sort of an exercise program for the Hujjaj before they leave. When the Hujjaj eventually reach, Makkah, Medina and so on, then the benefits to them are, as we can see, less injuries, less illnesses. So there's going to be a huge drop in demand for medical services, and therefore their budget can be also reduced, or that they spend at the moment on medical services. So for them, if they can get a buy-in, alhamdulillah, there's going to be only a value for them as well. But overall, it's just the whole idea of improving the experience of Hajj for the Hujjaj. They spend a lifetime collecting all this money, going over there, and the last thing that you want is that they run out of energy, or they become injured, or they become ill, and now the experience is dampened. So the intention is to get a maximum benefit from your experience when you are there. And one of the tools that we have is to improve your level of fitness.
Inshallah. Just to put it in context, South Africans in 2019, when we looked at the figures, each Hujjaj visited the health facility, the Sauk health facility, at least 2 times. Most people visited 3 times. So that doesn't sound like a lot if you look at 3,000 Hujjaj. But if you look at 150 Indians, for example, in 2015, 150 150 Indian Hujjaj visited their health facilities for 420 consultations. That is a staggering amount. So if you can reduce it by 50%, firstly, like you've already mentioned, the health budget can be cut, but also people will feel well. And alhamdulillah, I think the intention is good. The evidence seems to be coming through. We've already got the evidence of 2018. And inshallah, by the end of this year, when the Hajj is concluded, we'll have more data to inshallah, back up our current work. And I want to say shukran for the Academy for allowing us to have this program. We really feel that it is an important work that can contribute to the wellness of the Hujjaj. And final word from you and greeting from Dr. Nasir.
Yeah, so the whole intention of going ahead and doing this program is for people to, as I said, to worship the Almighty in a better state, and also to get, as I said, maximum reward for what is going to be lying ahead for them.
And from my side, shukran for again allowing us this opportunity. Hopefully we can continue it, and we will try to report back on the results of the current crop of Hujjaj who are there in Saudi Arabia at the moment. I want to say shukran, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh from my side as well.